Well, Coach Yost, thank you so much for taking time to join me on this episode. It's an honor to have you, fella.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and, go a little bit, go over my career a little bit because, I think when I retired, was the first time I really had a chance to sit back and kind of realize some of the neat stuff that we did. And I was quite frankly a little shocked, to realize at the end of my career, I'd been to the World Series 8 times and 2-time world champion and 7 All-Star games and the opportunity to manage them twice, Major League All-Star games, and win them both. And, one of the things I was real proud of is that I've had the opportunity to meet and talk with 5 different presidents. And I thought that was really cool. So, baseball has taken me on a wonderful journey. It was a tough journey, for not only me, but for my family too. And, it was a wonderful journey.
You go back and you get drafted and you do your years in the minor leagues, never made it as a player. And then you end up with the Braves, I believe, in the bullpen, correct? You're a bullpen coach. So what was your step there between playing and ended up with the Braves?
I played 6.5, almost 7 years in the big leagues. So I played with Milwaukee, Texas, and Montreal. My first year in the big leagues was 1980. So it took me a little while to get there, like 6 years, but,
yep.
Was there in 80, spent probably almost 3 months there, was there a month and a half or 2 months. And let's see, April, May, about 6 weeks because I got sent down and we were in Milwaukee. My wife and I packed our car and we were going to Vancouver, Canada, which was the AAA team, right? So we drove, and the first night we drove like 10 hours, 12 hours, whatever it was. And we pulled into Butte, Montana, and we turned the radio on. There was no satellite radio or anything back at that time. So we turned the radio on and it said the ash cloud would be at Butte sometime in the morning. And I looked at my wife, I said, what's an ash cloud? Right. Well, we woke up the next day. We had no idea that Mount St. Helens had blown up.
Oh my
And
gosh.
we were right in the middle of that. We were stuck in Butte, Montana for 4 days. They'd closed everything. And there was 6 inches of ash. It looked like snow out there. And we were stuck in the hotel for, like I say, 4 days before we had to backtrack all the way, 4 or 5 hours and go up to Alberta, Canada to get to Vancouver. But that was the start of my big league career. In 1981, we were there. We went on strike. 82, we went to the World Series. And 83, I played with Milwaukee. 84 with Texas, and parts of 85 with Montreal. So, I got to the point going into spring training in 1986 where I was with Montreal, went through spring training and thought I did okay. And at the end of spring training, I got called in and got released. They were going to go a different direction. I'm like, okay, I'm 31, 32 years old. And, I don't want to bounce around between AAA and the big leagues. So I've got a wife and I got kids. I'm going to have to go home and figure something out. I went to junior college for 2 years, but, my whole focus was playing baseball. It wasn't going to school, So, I had basically a high school education. What am I going to do? I got home and I was home about 2.5 weeks and I was gone. My wife got a phone call. So I got home and she said, hey, you got a phone call today? And I said, from who? She goes, Hank Aaron called. And I'm like, okay, all right. Which one of my friends is messing
exactly
with me, right? Well, the next day the phone rings again. It was Hank Aaron. Hank was the farm director for the Atlanta Braves at that time. And he said, look, we're looking for a veteran catcher to go to Greenville, South Carolina, to our AA team. We've got some really nice young prospects there and really nice pitching prospects. And we want a veteran catcher to work with them. Would you be interested? And I'm like, well, the only thing I really know is baseball. So, let me give, coaching a try and see if if I'm going to enjoy it. It's not that far away. It was like 6 hours from Jackson where we lived at that time. So or 7 hours. So I'm like, okay, I'll give it a try. I went to Greenville. Well, come to find out, the young prospects that they had were Tommy Glavine, Pete Smith, Tommy Green, Kent Merker, Jeff Blauser was on that team, Ronnie Gant, Mark Lemke, David Justice. I mean, it was the whole core of the young players that were going to, come to the big leagues and bring championship after championship, division championship there. So, of course, I absolutely loved it. I did that 2 years, bouncing between AA and AAA with those young players. And it was 86, 87, 88. I told them, look, I want to manage. So they gave me my own team, Sumter, South Carolina, and managed there for 3 years before Bobby Cox called and offered me the bullpen coach job in 91.
How did your years as a player, not living in the bigs the whole time, and you did the bouncing around, how did that help you working with these young men on their way up? How did that experience shape you to become that manager?
Well, people, I never really thought about this a whole lot until my first manager's interview for a major league manager's job. And Doug Melvin was the GM at that time. And he had asked me, he said, who were your mentors? And I thought, well, I immediately knew who my 3 mentors were, but I've never thought about it.
Wow.
And I told him Ted Simmons, Bobby Cox, and Dale Earnhardt. Now, Teddy Simmons, when I was in Milwaukee, I played in 80, 81, in the winter of 80 and 81, the Brewers made a trade with the St. Louis Cardinals, and they got Ted Simmons, Pete Vukovich, and Raleigh Fingers in a trade. So Teddy came over. 81 was the strike year, and Teddy was our player rep. So he was so involved with all that. I mean, I backed him up. We played like 2 months and then took 3 months off and then played 2 months at the end. So I didn't really get to know Teddy. I didn't really, I didn't really get to understand who he was or get to really, really know him. And in spring training in 1982, he came up to me after like 2 weeks and he goes, hey, I want to talk to you tomorrow. So I'm like, okay. I mean, it was at the end of the day. He goes, be here at 7 o'clock. So I'm like, okay, all right. So I went home thinking, what does he want to talk to me about? What could he possibly want? This guy, I don't really know him that well, even though we were teammates. But what could he possibly want to talk to me about? So the next day I show up at, 7 o'clock and he's sitting there at his locker and I sit down and he says, look, he says, I've had some great people teach me this game of baseball, the mental side of this game, understand what this game's all about. And he said, if you want, he said, I feel like it's my time to give back. And it's my time to teach you if you're interested. So I will teach you this game if you are interested. And I'm like, well, yeah, sure, I'm interested. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, what can he teach me? I played baseball my whole life. I understand what this game's about. But I told him, yeah. He goes, all right, every day I will have something for you. So I'm like, okay. Well, for the next 2.5 years,
wow,
dude, Teddy Simmons had something for me every single day. And we would sit and talk sometimes for 3 and 4 and 5 hours, sometimes after the game for 3 hours on what happened during the game. Teddy was the one that gave me my knowledge of the game. Teddy, when we sat down here, I'm a backup catcher. He hands me a sheet of paper and there was a baseball diamond on it. And he said, make copies of this. He says, because I want you to write down every play that you can think of, starting with nobody on, base hit to left field. And I want you to diagram where every player on the field goes. And I want it to be from nobody on, base hit to left to bases loaded, 2 outs. And where everybody's going, where every throw's going, where everybody's supposed to be lined up. And I'm like, all right. He goes, see what this is this is anatomy. And I said, anatomy? And he said, as a doctor, the first thing, if you want to be a doctor, the first thing you have to know is anatomy. He said, if you want to play baseball, this is your anatomy. You have to know as a catcher where every player on the field is supposed to be if you're going to be the leader of that team on any given day. You have to understand and you have to be able to see when a situation comes, is everybody in the right spot and direct people where they need to be. So that's where it started, with drawing and talking about the cutoff plays, and then infield defense and outfield alignment and the inner diamond defense, bunt plays, how to set up. I mean, it was numerous hours. So with Teddy's influence and Teddy's taking the time to teach me the game, I mean, it was like what he taught me. It was unbelievable that I could think that I knew everything. And the reality and the fact of the matter was I knew nothing.
Wow.
So he brightened my whole horizons and set me up to be a coach at that time. Because now I'm understanding exactly how the game's played. Now I can take this knowledge and pass it on to younger players. It was phenomenal. And that's, part of the mentorship. He was the one that taught me the game. So it was really, really important that I had that foundation. And Teddy's the one that gave it to me, because without him, I would have never. We talked about 8 World Series. Forget about that. That wouldn't have happened. I would have went to 1 with Teddy. Without Bobby, without Dale teaching you how to compete, there was a lot of different pieces to the puzzle that God kind of put together for me that I didn't understand at the time. That this was happening, but this was preparing me for something greater down the road.
That is such a great picture, Coach, because so many times we look at life, but we don't see the whole picture. We always talk about it in the rearview mirror. We look back and we go, oh, so that's why that happened. And that's why I ended up with Ted Simmons, and he taught me all this. What were the lessons you learned from Bobby Cox? What were some of your takeaways from a guy who didn't consider himself a teacher? He didn't consider himself. He was just a manager of a baseball team who happened to have a lot of good players, is mostly how you would hear Bobby describe himself. What were your takeaways from him that helped you be a manager one day?
Well, I was with Bobby for 12 years. And I made a point when I got hired to be the bullpen coach, I was going to watch and I was going to listen and I was going to soak in everything that he did. Bobby was a tremendous leader. Yeah. Bobby was a tremendous baseball manager. Bobby was the smartest person. They told me one time when I started my managerial career that if you want to be successful in a field, you look at the most successful person in that field and do everything as he does. Yep. And you will be as successful. Oh, well, I thought, okay, that's a great concept. I'm nowhere near as smart as Bobby. I'm nowhere near as the person that Bobby is. So Bobby taught me how to manage a game, watching Bobby. 8 years in the bullpen, 4 years as a third base coach. Now we talk about God putting pieces together. If Hank Aaron hadn't have called and given me the opportunity to go into Atlanta, and Bobby given me the opportunity to be the bullpen coach for 8 years, I caught every side session that Greg Maddux, John Smoltz, Tommy Glavine, all the great pitchers. I caught every side session they threw for 8 years. So I got to understand pitching. I got to be able to talk to 3 Hall of Famers and get to know exactly what made them successful. I watched how Bobby would handle his pitching, and that set me up for down the road on how to be a better manager. I watched how Bobby handled a multitude of different situations in terms of discipline system, discipline areas where he had to provide discipline for teams, guys that were struggling, superstars, how long do you stay with them? How do you handle this situation? How do you handle that situation? But most of all, what struck me more, I think, than how he handled the players, because the players absolutely loved him. They would, you could see that Bobby had their back. Bobby was totally supportive on the outside, but if they needed their rear end chewed off, Bobby would chew it off. I mean, he could do it with the best of them, but they always knew that it was in their best interest. And I was always amazed to watch his ability to do that. But more than anything, it was the way that he treated people that weren't in the game. the people that he would walk down the tunnel and say hi to and make them feel great. He knew all their names. He would stop and talk to them and give them, the time of day. The people in the parking lot, Bobby, would just made him feel good every time he saw them. The clubhouse kids, the press, he always made them feel like they were special. And I think more than anything, Bobby taught me how to manage a game. Yes, but how to manage people more and how to have that personality, that shows that, hey, you may be the one in charge, but you better understand that all these people are here helping you, and you better have some appreciation for it. And Bobby always did.
It's so funny. A really, really good friend of mine, Jack Llewellyn, who was back with you guys during that time, the sports psychologist. Jack was around those days with Bobby. He talked all the time. He said, Bobby had such a way of making you feel so good about yourself. Yeah. And he did it with everybody. It's exactly what he said. He did it with it wasn't just the players, but he said guys would change everything to play for Bobby Cox. Everybody wanted to play for him.
Yeah, they were dying to play for him. And it was, things like when I was coaching third base, I'd get a guy thrown out by 20 feet. 20 feet, and I go back in the dugout, I'd be upset with myself, and Bobby would walk by and he goes, Ned, you had to do that. I'd have done that too. He just made you feel good about it. It wasn't like, hey, what are you sending them for? And he goes, no, you had this. Yeah, you had to do that. I'd have sent them too. I'd have been in the same spot. That was a great send, and it was just stuff like that he always, he always had the ability to make you feel good. And I'll tell you a little story about Bobby. We were in St. Louis and we were playing the Cardinals, and Mike Stanton was on the mound. And there was 2 outs, and we had a 1-run lead, runner at second and third, and a ground ball hit to first. Well, Stanton was too slow to cover first. So he hesitated just enough, went over there. The runner was safe. Of course, the tying run scored. And because Stanton got mad at himself and pouted for a second, the winning run came around and scored. So now Stanton's standing there with the ball in his hand, and we're like, ground ball to first, game's over, we lose. How does that happen? Well, Bobby was a guy that didn't take those losses well, and I mean, you'd walk in the locker room and there'd be stuff smashing against the wall, and Bobby'd be screaming and yelling in his office, and we're just all sitting there, and all of a sudden the door flies open, and the manager's office had real thin walls, so you could hear it all, right? So he opens up the door and he comes out and he screams, Stanton, get in here. So Stanton goes walking into the locker room, blam, the door shuts, right? So we're all sitting there trying to hear. So a minute goes by, 2 minutes goes by, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, going on 15 minutes, and we don't hear nothing. All of a sudden, door opens up and Stanton walks out. So next day, we're all in the bullpen, and we're all the bullpen guys are like, Stan, what happened? He goes, oh, man. He goes, I went in there. He slammed the door. He told me to sit down. And I'm just waiting for him I thought he was going to beat me up. And I'm sitting there like this. I got my head down and I got my eyes closed, and I'm waiting for him to start yelling at me. And I wait and I wait and I wait. And nothing's happening. I look up and he's staring at me. Oh, I put my head back down. And I said, I'm waiting for him to scream at me. I'm waiting. He said, this went on for like 10 minutes. And I looked up, and finally, when I looked up after like 10, 12 minutes, he looked at me and he goes, Mike, don't ever let that happen again. And Stanton goes, trust me, Bobby, it'll never happen again. And Bobby goes, okay, get out of here. But the thing that Bobby could do could be so mad at you 1 second, but within an hour, it was like nothing ever happened. He had the ability to let go and forget, and I think that was a great lesson that I learned. I think another great lesson that I learned is Bobby understood that this is an extremely hard game to play. And these players are so talented, they make it look easy, but there's nothing easy about it. And the only thing that you can ask from your players day in and day out is that they go and they give you 100% of their effort every day. That's it. He didn't care if you went 0 for 4, didn't care if you went 4 for 4. If you could look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and say, I gave my best effort, you've done your job for that day. And, I remember him telling me, when these players look at their contract, they don't look at their contract and it says hit 40 home runs or strike out 200 or 20 wins. No, their contract basically says we'll pay you X amount of dollars for your very best effort every day.
Mm.
And that's that was true. And I think all of this knowledge that I took helped me to understand how to treat players better, because I think in my era, players were different. When I came up, when Bobby came up, we played on the street. We played baseball from the time we woke up to the time we went to bed, and we never locked doors, and nobody had cell phones, and nobody knew where anybody was. And this generation of kids, they grew up watching, cable TV and cell phones and playing video games instead of playing. It was a whole different environment, and you had to understand how to reach a different generation of kids that grew up differently than you did. When I grew up, when I played in the big leagues, if I messed up, the manager would scream and yell at you, man. But you took it like a man, and it's like no hard feelings. You understood it was just, you understood what it was. You didn't pout. You didn't get your feelings hurt. You just went in and did better next time. But you did that in this generation, guys would shrink, it would really affect them for like 2 weeks. It would really hurt their feelings. So you had to find other ways to, get to them, to motivate them, to get them to understand what we're trying to do as a collective group. And Bobby did that as, better than anybody.
I was at his retirement celebration that they had that year. I think it was in 2014 and downtown. And he talked about the players. That's what I remember him talking about. The coaches and the players were why he won. I heard you at your retirement celebration talk about the players and talk about the great collection of individual, not that you were the winningest manager in Royals history, not that you have the highest winning percentage of any major league manager in postseason competition, but you talked about your players. Why is it so key that a leader or a coach loves those that they lead? Why is that so key? Because I heard that in your voice, in that when you had the microphone standing in the middle of the field. Why is that so key that you love the people you lead?
I just think that that's an important factor. And, I think you've got to be honest with yourself when you sit back and look at it, and people say, oh, you're just being humble. No, I'm not. I mean, Bobby hit it. We had a tremendous group of coaches that worked their hearts out every day to make these players better. We had a group of players that worked their hearts out every single day to get better. And it was, I just think that it was a really neat relationship between the two. And, my focus was, and I think, I learned this from Bobby too, is that if a player messed up, 9.5 times out of 10, I would go to the coach and I would tell the coach, I want this addressed, and let the coach address it with the player. Because a pitching coach has relationship with the pitchers. An outfield coach has relationships with the outfielders. I never wanted two messages sent. So I wouldn't try to tell you something, not knowing what my coach had said. So I would never do that. If it was a lack of hustle, or if it was something like that I needed to address, we would address it. But I would let my coaches coach. And I think that was the most important thing. And that's what Bobby did. Bobby let us coach. We didn't have to walk in and say, Bobby, can I do this? Can we do this? No, you coached and you took care of the people that you were supposed to take care of. And, you just get a group of guys that play so hard. And the thing that is amazing, I don't think that people really understand, but when you look at a group of baseball players, the majority of them are somewhere between 20 and 30 years old, and they're making a bunch of money, and you think, oh, these guys are, no, they're kids.
Yeah.
They're kids, and they want leadership, they want direction, they want structure, they want to be led. And when you lead them, they follow, for the most part. But you have to provide it for them. And we provided it in a bunch of different levels, not only from Dayton Moore, the GM, or not only from me, not only from their coaches. They never could could do wrong as long as they were given everything that they had. And there were times where, you know, players like Mike Moustakas, I remember we laughed at him because he was hitting 160, wondering how much longer am you going to play me? I stink. And I'm like, dude, I believe you're going to be an all-star one day. So I'm going to play you until you don't think you can play anymore. And when you start to lose your confidence, that's when you're going to sit down. But because you are playing bad, you're not the one that's getting the fans riled up. It's me because I'm playing you. So don't worry about it. Let me take it, right? I don't care about it. Let me take it. You just go out and play. And of course, you know, that's what happened. I always felt when I was a player, when I struggled, if a manager would just let me work through it, I would have been fine. But back in those days, you never got the opportunity to work through it unless you were a superstar. Yep. So, you know, I had to go to the ballpark you had to go 2 for 4 to get a chance to play the next day. And it's a lot of pressure. And you know, I didn't want to put that on my players, but you know, it's just a group of guys. I think that you just let them know that you care for them. And, you know, our organization was family first. And, you know, there would be times where we would be on a losing streak and, you know, we'd lose 4 or 5 in a row. And, you know, I'd get them in the locker room and I'd get them all up close. I learned that screaming didn't work, you know, so I would make them all stand up and come close in a huddle. And I would shock them by telling them, look, I'm so proud of you guys. Yeah, we've lost 6 in a row, but you guys are playing your hearts out. You guys keep this up. This is going to turn around quick. And I mean, stuff like that, instead of beating them down, it always built them back up. And, you know, it just made them feel like they were invincible.
When you got the call in 2002 to become the manager of the Brewers, what were the thoughts going through your mind when you thought, man, this is my opportunity? What settled in on your shoulders when you took that role to step out to be that manager? What would you say?
Well, I can remember, you know, being with the Braves for all those years and all those championships, you know, and of course, you know, we talked about the 3 mentors. We talked about Bobby Cox and Teddy Simmons. Well, my third mentor was Dale Earnhardt, and we were hunting buddies for 12, 15 years. And I remember we were in Texas and we were driving around hunting, and Dale was at the end of his career. It was at the end of his contract, and he had his own team at that time, but he was still driving with Richard Childress and Goodwrench. And we were talking about his contract negotiation. And I said, why don't you just go drive for yourself? I mean, you've got this team set up, DEI. I mean, it's perfect. It'd be a perfect scenario. Go drive for yourself. He goes, because we're not ready to win yet. And I said, what? He goes, we're not ready to win yet. He goes, let me tell you something. You don't ever leave a winner to go to a loser. Never. That never happens. You never happen. So that's why I can't go drive for myself. We're not ready to win. RCR is ready to win. I'll never leave a winner to go to a loser. And he goes, you won't either. And I'm like, well, Dale, listen, I'm gonna have to probably leave the Braves to go to a loser. And that's gonna be my shot. And he grabbed me and goes, no, you won't. You don't do it. You never do it. You never leave a winner to go to a loser. You stay there till Bobby retires and you take over for Bobby. I said, Bobby's not retiring for 10 years. I said, I've got to get an opportunity before then. I mean, he's shaking. Don't do it. You can't do it. You have to stay there, right? So when I took that job, Dale was gone by then. And that's all I could think of, is that I left a winner to go to a loser. And I'm just like, oh, man. I remember putting on that jersey for the first time and looking at it and thinking, man, what did I do? You know, but I played in Milwaukee. I went to the World Series in Milwaukee the last time the Brewers went to the World Series. I was on that team. So it was a special city for me. It was a special organization. And, you know, my mindset was that I was going to leave a winner, go to a loser, build it back to a winner. And, you know, we were close. We was there for almost 7 years, and we were on the verge of the playoffs. And again, we had a new owner, and we had just come off September and August where we were 20-6. We had a great August. went into September, the last month of September, and we lost 10 out of 13 right out of the get-go. And I got a call in Chicago, and I walked up to, my GM's room, and he goes, "Look, we got to make a change." I said, "Okay, what change are we making?" And he goes, "Well, you." I'm going, "You got to be kidding me, right?" He goes, "No, we got to make a change." So anyway, we had gone from 106 losses to 20 games over 500, which was pretty darn good. We had built it right back on the verge, and they actually went to the playoffs that year and lost. So I just kept thinking all the time, that it was my job. We're going to work hard to turn a loser into a winner. And it really didn't come into fruition until we got to Kansas City. And I'll remember in 2014, when that last out was made, the only thing I could think of was Dale. We did it. We turned a loser into a winner. And, I know you're proud of me, and we did it. So
what's it? And that's a great point, Coach. What's it take to change a culture? Because anybody who leads any organization, whether it's a college baseball team or a business or a school, church, you walk in, you can feel a losing culture. I mean, it's palatable when you walk in the locker room or walk on the field. What are the intangibles that it takes to turn that mindset? Because I heard you say in an interview when you took the Kansas City job, I hope we can win. And I know we can win. It's just the players knowing they can win. Right. What's it take to make that mental shift for an organization to change?
Well, the first thing you have to understand, I think more than anything else, is that if you don't have talent, you're not going to win. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you don't have talent on your baseball team, you don't have talent on your football team, you're not going to win no matter. And really the fallacy of all professional sports is they think you should win no matter what. If you don't, why is this team not winning? We don't have enough talent to win. Yeah. People don't understand that. You should just win, right? Well, we didn't have talent in 2010 when I came on. But when Dayton Moore hired me in December, I went to spring training with the Kansas City Royals as a special assignment or a special assistant to the general manager. So I would go do things, whatever Dayton wanted me to do. And I would watch the big league team in the morning in spring training. Then I would watch the minor league players in the afternoon for 6 weeks. And I had the opportunity to watch and see all of these young players that the Royals had. Just reminded me of the Blausers and the Lemkes and the Justices. And I mean, a tremendous core group of young, talented players that you could envision down the road winning a championship with. So, you have to have that talent first. So you develop them in the minor leagues till they get to the big leagues. And luckily for us, we had a group that got all there about the same time. And it's always been my experience that in Atlanta, in Milwaukee, that it takes a group of players about 2.5 years for them to get to the big leagues, get comfortable, go through all the stuff that they have to go through before they can get to a point where they can really start to have success. So it happened in Atlanta, 2.5 years, 2.5 years in Milwaukee before they took off. And I remember we got to the 2.5 year point in 13. And, I'm thinking, okay, here we go. We're at the All-Star break, which is kind of the unofficial halfway point. We went into Yankee Stadium. We were 3 games under 500 on a team that was used to being 20, 30 games under 500. And I'm like, okay, we're at the 2.5 year point right here. What's going to happen is we're going to go in there. We're going to sweep the Yankees. We're going to start the second half, at 500, and we're going to take off. So we go in there, and much to my dismay, they swept us. So we went into the All-Star break, 6 games under 500. And I remember flying home. You get to fly home for a couple of days and just rest. And I'm thinking, well, this is a special group, but maybe it's going to take this group a little bit longer. And when we came back from the All-Star break to the end of 2014, we had the best record in baseball.
How about that?
So, yeah, we were just, it was just a tremendous group that finally took off. And I think more than anything else is that what we did as a group of coaches, and I told my players, look, we're going to teach these guys how to win. We're going to give them freedom to play, and we're going to give them freedom to understand how to play the game and how to win. We got to teach them how not to be selfish. We got to teach them how not to be, worry about their own stats. The only thing that's important is the W at the end of the day. And for 2.5 years, we pounded it. And I'll never forget, we went into the wild card game in 2014. We were battling for the division. Actually, we were one game back going into the last game of the season. And if we won and Detroit lost, we would have had a playoff. And we were hoping for that. We didn't want to have a one-game playoff against the A's. So we ended up losing that game. Detroit won anyway. So we went into the wild card game, and we were playing, like I said, Oakland, and we had one of our nemesis, John Lester, was pitching against, and we couldn't. We just couldn't beat John Lester. We just couldn't. And we got into the 7th inning, and they had a 3-run lead. And I'll never forget our players coming in the dugout for the bottom of the 7th inning, and I could hear a murmur down there. They were all down there, and I could hear a murmur, and then it got louder, and it got louder. And Mike Kostakis and Haas and Salvi were down there, and they were all screaming, "That's it. He's not beating us. Not tonight. This is not. He will not beat us. Not tonight. Let's go. Let's go. Let's get on base. Let's score a run. This guy will not beat us." Well, we ended up scoring 2 runs in the bottom of the 7th, and then didn't score anything in the 8th. Tied the game up in the 9th. And then I think we ended up going 12 innings before we finally won it. But that was the start of winning 8 in a row. And that was the exact moment that they believed that they could win. They knew up to that point, they thought they could win. They thought that they could win. But in the 7th inning of the wild card game, that group all of a sudden believed that they could win. And it was no looking back. I mean, we lost the World Series that year in Game 7. We had the tying run at third base in the 9th inning. And if it wasn't for a heroic, job by Madison Bumgarner, we'd have won 2 World Series in a row. But, it was a group that had the freedom to play. They understood that if they were daring and they took chances, they were educated chances. They knew, when to go for it, when not to go for it. And, they knew that they were backed up 100% by the coaching staff. And it was just a freedom to play the game that was, at the end of the day, just so much fun for them because all they focused on was winning.
When 2015 happened and you finished it, 2014, you were so close, and anybody outside the game of baseball or really outside sports in general, to get there one time is amazing. To take the same team and get back is almost impossible. There's so many breaks that have to happen. There's so many things that have got to go your way, and you're back in 2015, but yet you don't leave anybody on. You finish it. When that game finished and all the festivities happened and your head hit the pillow that night, what were the emotions that you were feeling as a lifelong baseball man who now has gotten to experience a World Series winning a world championship as a manager? What did that feel like?
Yeah, well, you're not going to believe it when I tell you, but we went through 15 with a chip on our shoulder. Our guys knew how close they came the year before, and they weren't going to let that happen again. They were so determined and so focused day in and day out, and we just ran away with it. We had the best record in the American League, and we just had a phenomenal team. We had some real tense moments in the playoffs. We were down in Game 4, which was an elimination game in Houston. They had scored 3 runs and had a 3-run lead or a 4-run lead going into like the 7th inning or 8th inning. We tied the game up, took the lead, won it, and came back and won Game 5 and had some tough games against Toronto to go to the World Series. But, at the end of each series, you get the champagne and everybody's spraying and everybody's having a good time and jumping up and down. And, in 15, I'm like, I'm not going in. Let them have their fun, let them enjoy it. So my coach is like, are you coming out for this? I'm like, no, I'm coming out for only one. And that's when we won the World Series.
I love it.
So we got down. I'll never forget, we were sitting there in the 12th inning. Haas in the 9th inning, we were down 2 runs, 2-0 in the 9th inning. And we ended up tying the ball game up on a great play by Eric Hosmer. We made this mad dash home and ended up tying the ball game. And we had runner at second base, and Christian Colon, a little pinch hitter that we had, ends up getting a base hit. And then I just remember thinking to myself, as soon as that run scored, we just won the World Series. So I'm sitting there thinking to myself, we just won the World Series because I got Wade Davis, who is the absolute best closer in the game, in the bullpen, ready to come in the ball game. Well, our guys kept getting hits, and we scored 2 runs, 3 runs, 4 runs, and I think we ended up scoring like 5 runs that inning. And I'm like, I was thinking to myself, come on, somebody make it out. I want to get this thing over, right? So please, we got enough runs. Wade's coming in. And I remember Wade striking out the last hitter and hugging my coaches, and I wanted them on the field. I stayed back in the dugout and just to watch them and enjoy them, right? So by the time I went out there, they were whipped up into a frenzy, right? I mean, I was getting hugged and picked up, and Gatorade splashes on me, and we had to go into the locker room, and the commissioner gives you the trophy. And the edit was, nobody spray champagne until the commissioner leaves. So don't anybody try to think you're going to get the commissioner wet. That's not the way. As soon as the commissioner walks out the door, you can bust the champagne. So we're all up there on national TV, me and Dayton and my owner, Mr. Glass, who since passed away, was one of the most phenomenal people on the face of the earth. We got to give him that World Series trophy. And, when it was done and the commissioner walked out, I walked out. And I went into my office and I sat down and I looked up and I saw Dayton sitting on the couch. And we couldn't even talk to each other. We just looked at each other and smiled because, since 2010, when we came in, there was numerous times where we'd struggled so much. He could have fired me.
Mm-hmm.
There was numerous times people were calling for his head, but we never doubted that this wasn't going to happen. We always knew that we were going to win a championship, and we just sat there and smiled. We didn't talk. We didn't hug. We didn't high five. We just sat there while they were going nuts in there, right? But I was absolutely worn out at that time. I just had instead of exhilaration, I had a huge sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
I just felt good about what we accomplished. And of course, at that time, we were probably drinking whatever came down, some champagne, some beer, and I don't know, there might have been some Jack Daniels in there or something. And finally, at 5 a.m, the Mets got mad at us and kicked us out of the stadium, right? We were celebrating. So by the time I got back to the hotel, I had all my family there. It was about 7 o'clock, and the bus was leaving at 10 to catch plane back to Kansas City. And I didn't think anything about it. Nothing. We had won the World Series. I was happy. We did it. That's good, right? And I couldn't sleep. I went down to Starbucks and bought coffee for everybody, got them up because we all had to catch the plane. And I remember getting on the plane the next day and sitting in my seat, and my phone rang. So I looked at it and it said, no caller ID. So I said, no caller ID. I only know 2 people that have no caller ID. One's Robin Yount, who was a roommate of mine in Milwaukee, and the other is Joe Torre. So it's probably Joe Torre calling to congratulate me for winning the World Series. So I answer the phone and said, hello. And they go, yes, may I speak with Ned Yost, please? And I go, this is Ned Yost. And he goes, can you please hold for a call from the President of the United States? And it was Barack.
Gosh.
Yeah, it was Barack Obama. So we sat and talked on the phone for 15 minutes. He was inviting us to the White House, and he's a White Sox fan. And we just, for 15 minutes, we just sat and and talked on the phone. And that's when I first understood that we might have done something special here.
Yeah.
And then the next day, I really understood it when we had close to 900,000 people in the parade for our championship. But it changed, it changed people's lives because it'd been a generation, I think, since 1985 of fans that, got to witness the last World Series, and, kids that grew up with their dads enjoying that now, where the dads had kids and now they get to enjoy it. So I never really understood the impact of winning a world championship for a small market town like Kansas City until we did it. And I never comprehended how big a deal that was.
And it's interesting. You and Dayton Moore had such a great, going back even to the Braves years of his time with the Braves, but y'all also had faith in common. How big was your faith in your journey as a player, in your journey as a coach, as a husband, a father of your beautiful kids? What role has faith played in that journey, Coach?
Well, it's played a huge role for me. I grew up in California. My wife grew up in Jackson, Mississippi. She had gone to church her whole life. I had never really gone to church. So, I'll never forget going to church with her because she wanted me to go to church with her. And what really, I did everything I could to stay awake and nod off. And, I remember one time I would go, I made a deal. It shows you how crazy things can be. I made a deal with God. Look, I'll go to our team Bible studies, but you need to let me hit 285 and 10 home runs. And, that's your part of the deal. And of course that don't work. Right. So, Sal Bando, who was our chapel leader in Milwaukee, I came back one winter and he said, "Have you grown any?" And of course, I'm like, "Sal, I'm 6'1". I'm 27 years old. I don't think I'm done growing." I missed the whole point of what he was talking about, right? So, I kept my whole life, I kept searching for something to fill the gap in my chest, right? And I thought growing up that, maybe I needed to excel at something to fill that void. My dad was an All-American football player. My cousin on my dad's side was an All-American football player. He played 7 years in the NFL, and here I was 5'2" as a freshman in high school, right? So I ended up playing baseball as a sophomore, played JV. I went the whole year and didn't get a hit. I was 0 for 36. Next year as a junior, this never happened. I had to play JV baseball as a junior. And I remember getting 3 hits as opening day. And I thought, well, at least I'm getting hits this year. And ended up my senior year, I had a growth spurt between my sophomore, my junior and senior year. Played varsity and made all county, all league, all county. I really had a great year, but I had no college offers. So I had to walk on to a junior college. And I just kept thinking, for me, the only thing I want to do is play baseball. So if I can sign a contract, that's going to fill that void. And I remember back then, it's not like it was now where they televise the draft. Back then, once the draft came, you had to call the newspaper and say, "Hey, is anybody from the Bay Area get drafted?" Well, let me look at the ticker, right?
Yep.
Well, Ned Yost got drafted by the New York Mets. What round? In the first round. I'm like, "Oh, I'm signing," right? So I signed, and I kept thinking, okay, this is going to fill this void. And it was real exciting for, a week or two. And then you go off and you start playing, and it's like, nope, that didn't do it. Well, maybe I got to get to AA. So you get to AA. Nope, that didn't do it. Well, maybe I got to get to AAA. Nope, that didn't do it. Well, maybe if I'm a big league player, you're working hard, finally get to the big leagues for like 2 or 3 weeks, it's kind of feeling better. And then boom, nope, that didn't do it. So I kept thinking to myself, well, maybe I got to become a champion. And if I can become a champion, maybe that'll fill that void. And went to the World Series in '82, and we ended up losing Game 7. I'm like, man, I was so close to filling that hole. But I remember in 1995, we were in Atlanta. We had been to the World Series in '91 and '92. missed out in 93, had the strike in 94. And here we were, in game 6, and David Justice hit a home run. Tommy Glavitt's throwing a 1-hit shutout through 8 innings. And he's just pitching wonderfully. And the phone rings. Answer the phone. I'm like, what? Why is the phone ringing? Tommy's got a 1-hit shutout. He's just dealing. Bobby's on the other line. He goes, Ned, Woolers is in the game. And I said, what? He goes, I know. Tommy's worn out. Tommy's done. Woolers is in the game. I said, okay. Oh, I hung up and I go, Woolers, you're in the game. Woolers goes, what? I go, Tommy's done. You're in the game. Here we go. Come on, let's go. So Woolers gets up, and I mean, you could see the vein in his neck pumping, right? And he's just so excited. He's throwing 1,000,000 miles an hour. And Mark didn't have a really good pickoff move to first. Oh. And Kenny Lofton was leading off, right? So I'm like, if Kenny Lofton gets on, he's going to steal second, steal third. The game's 1-0. They're going to tie it up. I mean, you get all these thoughts going through your head because you want that hole filled in your chest, right? Mm. And sure enough, he gets in the ball game, ball 1, ball 2. And I'm like, come on, we'll throw a strike. And then boom, he throws the third pitch about a foot inside, but Kenny Lofton swings at it. It's a little foul ball down the third base line. And I'm thinking, okay, well, at least the count is 2-1. And out of nowhere, Rafael Belliard came flying like Superman, lunged and caught the ball, right? And now there's 1 out. And I'm thinking, that's it. Yeah, that's it. We're going to win the World Series. And of course, he gets the next guy out, and the third guy hits the pop fly to Marquise Grissom. And as soon as that ball was hit, I looked up, saw the ball. I looked back, I saw Grissom. I looked up and saw the ball and started sprinting for the mound. I'm going to be on that pile, right? I mean, this was going to really fulfill me, I think, as a person. So we have the big celebration that night and go through it. And then for like a week or two, it's like you're on cloud 9. You just won the world championship. And then all of a sudden, boom, nothing, right? Nothing. And I ended up actually, after winning the world championship in 95, having the worst winter that I've ever had. I was totally miserable. Totally. I mean, just totally miserable because I got nothing left. I just won the world championship. I'm like, that's nothing. There's nothing left. So I ended up going to spring training. I think my kids and my wife threw a party when I left. They were glad to see me go. It was one of those. And I got to spring training, and I'm sitting there. I'm just miserable. I didn't want to be there. It was just terrible. And I opened up my suitcase and started, throwing my clothes over there on the dresser. And I looked. There was a letter. It was a fat letter. And a book on Christian marriage that my wife had been putting in my suitcase for, like 2 years that I had yet to crack. Right. So I'm sitting there. I said, I can't deal with this right now. So I go to the workouts the next couple of days. And finally I sit down and I look at this letter. I'm going to have to open this sooner or later. So I opened it up, and I just thought that, it was going to be this letter about telling me how big a jerk I am. And, why don't you shape up and this and that? Well, it was an 11-page letter my wife had written telling me how much she loves me. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, I don't know. And then I grabbed this book on Christian marriage. I opened it up, and the passage that I looked at said, when you are married, God takes 2 hearts and cleaves them into one, so that the 2 are turned into one. And I'm like, man, I don't even feel like one. This is I'm horribly selfish. I don't. This is just my whole life is a mess. And I sat there for a second. All of a sudden, I got on my knees, and I said this prayer. I said, Lord, I've come to you many times asking for things, wanting things in return. My whole life, that's what I've done. I said, I'm coming to you right now asking for nothing but your son, Jesus, to come into my heart.
Wow.
And to turn my life around. I've made a mess of my life, and I need Jesus Christ to come into my life. And from that point on, it was February 1996. I mean, it felt like a ton of bricks were lifted off my shoulders. And that void was now gone. And now I'm like, what was that? What happened? How do I understand what just happened? And there was a Christian bookstore about 2 blocks down. I ran down, got my car, and then was buying books. I had to figure it out. And then it was such a wonderful freedom involved in this. It was like you're scared you're going to lose it, and then you get to understand. Look, this is forever. This is absolutely. You've made a decision for Christ. Now you have been born again through His Spirit in your life, and it was a journey now, right? It was now a journey, and after like 3 weeks or a month, I called Deborah. I said, "You need to come down here. I need to talk to you about something," and she came down. She was scared. She was like, "What does he want to talk to me about?" And I explained this to her, and our life has changed from that point. I mean, you still do stupid things, and you're still selfish, and you still do things, but at the end, you understand what the purpose of your life is about, right. That God has a plan for you. And I think that, you always want to be more faithful, and you always want to be more, Christ-like in everything that you do. And you're always praying for it. And your focus, is always that. But in terms of a manager, it made my life so much easier because I started to understand, hey, I have 40,000 people in the stands every single night and 1 million or 2 watching every move that I make. But here's the great thing about all that. I don't have to please them. I have to please one person, and that's it. And if I please you, Lord, I've done my job. So it just simplified everything in terms of managing. And I got to understand. I mean, I never could understand how a major league manager or a person that creates so much criticism day in, day out with every move that you make, how can you not be a man of faith and have that job? It's just the pressure on you would just be absolutely tremendous without just turning it, surrendering it. So that was the biggest part. Again, I think more than anything else, God takes you on this journey, right? And you're living and you're getting better. And once we started 2012, we started getting these kids. I would always get to the stadium about 10:30. I was always there for a 7 o'clock game. I'd prepare, right? But I'd always be the first one there, and I would open up the door. I would walk in the clubhouse. I'd turn on the lights, and I would start in the far locker on the far side, and I would walk and I would pray for every one of those players in that room. I'd pray for their health. I would pray for their families. I would pray that they would be able to give their best effort, that they understood as a man what their position was in terms of being a dad, in terms of being a role model in the community. And I would pray for the community, and this went on every single day. And I remember in 2013, when right at the end, or excuse me, it was 2014, and we were fighting for the wild card, and it was late in the year, and Boston had come in, and Boston wasn't a very good team at that time. So I expected, to win at least 3 out of 4 against them, to help us continue our wild card fight. And we ended up losing 3 out of 4. I think we lost the first one, won the second, lost the third, and lost the fourth on a Sunday afternoon. And I was mad. I mean, I was mad. I went home, and every day, first thing I'd do, I'd make a cup of coffee, and I had 2 or 3 little Bible programs that I would read in the morning. That's how I would start my day. So I woke up that day, and I was upset, and I started reading my Bible programs, and I got halfway through them, and I said, Lord, why do you make us go through this? Why do we have to go through this? We've been faithful. We need your help to understand why we cannot provide more enjoyment. This city deserves a team that can win. These players deserve to win, Lord. They've worked hard. We stay focused. We focused on you. Why do we have to go through what we're going through now in order to, again, when can you help us? When are you going to step out and bless us and help us win some baseball games? Stupid, right? So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I hear this little voice in my head, and it's like, do you know who I am? And I'm thinking to myself, yeah. Well, who am I? Well, you created the heaven and earth. And I'm like, that's what you did. You're God. Yes. And he goes, do you believe? This thought went through my head. Do you believe I have a plan for your life? Yes. Do you believe that I can make anything happen in this earth, that I control everything that happens, and that everything that happens is happening for a purpose? Yes. And you believe that I have a plan for your life? Yes. And then this thought came through my head: start acting like it. And from that moment on, it was like, Lord, you are so right. I do believe you have a plan for my life. I do believe you have a plan for this team. And forgive me for not acting like it. And it just changed everything for me. I mean, just absolutely. And that's where I first understood faith.
Yep.
You know, that's faith. That, okay, Lord, I'm turning everything over to you. I understand that you've got total control over everything. I don't know what the future holds, but I know who holds the future, and I'm turning it over to you. And from that point on, the anxiety, the ups, the pressure to win every single day was gone, and we went on and had great runs from that point.